As students, college students, I expect that most of you, if not all, have attended a preliminary school, a preschool or a kindergarten. And there you played with building blocks and you gathered in a circle and you sang songs and you played outside. And each one of these things is part of the Fröebelian method. Friedrich Fröebel was an educator and a philosopher. He was thoughtful and compassionate, and he was extremely enthusiastic. He believed in the nature of all things, and most importantly, the nature of a child. He created the concept and design of kindergarten in 1837. And he named it kindergarten because it translates to garden of children. And he had two ideas behind this. One was that the child would be in an enclosed space where it could play and grow and thrive. And the other reason was that the child could plant a seed and water it and watch it grow and experience the natural phenomena. He believed that children should associate with each other and that they might have the nuanced little life experiences that would make them whole. And most importantly, that they would educate themselves as well as each other. Because Fröebel was a lonely child. He was born in 1782 in Thuringia, and he was neglected. And at the age of 10, he moved in with his uncle. And there he thrived. Thuringia had beautiful forests and plants and herbs, and he studied botany and mineralogy. He was an apprentice to a forester. And over the years, he eventually landed in a teaching position that taught Swiss educators methods, Johann Pestalozzi. And he fell in love. This was his true passion. And so after a couple of years, he went to Switzerland to study under Pestalozzi. And there, he realized that they had something in common. They both were fascinated with Jean-Jacques Rousseau. Rousseau wrote a treatise on education that they both drew inspiration from. And Rousseau's theory was that the need for education came from nature, men, and things. And Pestalozzi's theory was that it came from the child-rearing ages and in motherhood. You believed that mothers were the first true educators. So in expanding on this, he developed field trips and group learning. He grouped them based on abilities and not age. And after a while, Fröebel said he had gotten enough, and he went back to Thuringia to open his own institute in 1816. And Pestalozzi had an incredible reputation in Europe. So by the time Fröebel opened it, it was thriving, and he did really well. However, he was unable to truly incorporate his own ideas. He found a few gaps in Pestalozzi's method that he wanted to incorporate himself. So he published his own book in 1826 called The Education of Man. And here, he highlighted that the child's own nature is the law of his education, believing that it wasn't with the mother, but with the child himself. And this kind of free thinking made the Prussian government skeptical. So they, kind of were shooing him away. So he left in 1829 and started publishing other ideas about this nursery. And eventually, in 1837, he opened the Child Nurture and Activity Institute. He knew it was a working title, and eventually, watching the children play came up with the name kindergarten. So he's doing this humbly, like in a barn, for years. And in 1848, two really important things happen. The first is the Spring of Nations, and there's civil unrest, there's revolutions all over Europe, and so it misplaces a lot of people because the German states shut it down. The other thing is that Baroness Marienholz-Berlot met Friedrich Fröebel, and she fell in love with his ideas. She advocated for him, she was a believer, she was kind of like his translator because he was a little eccentric, and she really brought him to other places within the elite. Unfortunately, over time, he was shut down by the Prussian government because they believed that he was a revolutionist and that they condemned his kindergartens. And they were shut down until after his death when he died in 1852. But the seed had already been planted, and a few women who had attended his lectures over the years were exiled for being liberals in the Revolutionary Wars. And they were sent to London and France and the Netherlands. And one of these women was Marguerite Schurz, and she eventually ended up in Wisconsin. And in 1856, in her little German immigrant community, she opened up her living room to her children and their cousins and started teaching kindergarten. And over time, word had spread, and Elizabeth Peabody, who was a well-known educator and advocate for children's education, ran into her and was encouraged to open her own. And so by 1860, Elizabeth Peabody opened the first English-speaking kindergarten in Boston. And it caught on. It's right around the Industrial Revolution. Women were going to work, and they loved that their children were going to learn. By 1914, they had advocated for public kindergarten in all major cities. And today, 42 states mandate that every district offer kindergarten, and the National Center for Educational Statistics shows that 84 to 88% of all 5-year-olds attend preliminary school each year, and 77% attend full-time. And all of this is because of Friedrich Fröebel. And we know personally what it's like to be in kindergarten in an environment that promotes your strength, your health, and gives our activities meaning.